Thank you for joining us for this meeting of the Negev Funders Work Group. I'm Ilan Amit, the Task Force Israel representative. We have a lot to cover today, so I'll just jump in. We've been discussing different Negev-related issues in this group, mostly through the framework of the state. We've met with Sigal Moran, the director of the Ministry of Welfare. We've met with Esther Akiva from the Negev clusters to discuss different development programs in the Negev. Today, we will be covering a different aspect of development in the Negev, more of a top-down point of view on recognition and the state of recognition of the Bedouin unrecognized villages in the Negev. Quite a broad issue. And I just want to say that usually in our meetings, either here in this group or in the Broad Foundation Forum meetings, we usually anchor our discussions in through aspects of narrowing gaps between Jews and Arabs. And I think when it comes to the Negev, probably the most stubborn barrier to narrowing gaps between Jews and Arabs is the issue of recognition, the possibility to provide services to the Bedouin population in the Negev, proper education, public transportation, health services, and so on. And the issue of recognition is a stubborn barrier that is also painfully slow to overcome. In spite of that, in the past years, there was significant advancement, and there was a slow process of recognition of some Bedouin villages in the Negev, hand in hand, moving forward with some processes of ordination of unrecognized villages, Hasdara b'makom, the ordination process. This process is moving forward in many ways due to collaborations between different civil society organizations, research institutes, advocacy organizations, urban planners, local authorities, and state. And this is what we're going to be cover today. That's what we'll be covering today. A collaboration between three different civil society organizations in the Negev that push forward the discourse around recognition of the Bedouin villages and allow the state to use a very specific terminology and adopt a very specific point of view on recognition, a point of view that slowly filtrates into the state's actions in recognizing de facto the Bedouin villages, including the recognition of the latest three Bedouin unrecognized villages in the Negev, Abde, Rahme, and Hashim Zaneh, within the scope of Government Resolution 1279. So because we have a lot to cover, I'm handing this over to Ela Gil, program coordinator of the Negev Equality Project in Sikui Ufuk. We will be hearing a lot of urban planning jargon here today. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. We will be also replying your questions in parallel in the chat. Ela Gil, go ahead.
Thank you. Ilan, can you share the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give a very quick introduction. And I see that we have Yala with us, and we're gonna jump straight into the gist. Hi, everyone. My name is Ela. I represent Sikui Ufuk. I know some of the faces. And we're here today representing three NGOs, along with Sikui Ufuk is I'm sorry for my voice, by the way. I'm going to try my best. Along with Sikui Ufuk, we have the Regional Council for Unrecognized Villages, and we have BIMCOM. We're going to each representative is going to speak a little bit about our organizations, but the main thing we want to talk about is how our work, like Ilan said, how our work affects the government's policy regarding the unrecognized villages in the Negev, and how we came about to work together in these different topics surrounding recognition. So just to kind of give us, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, this is a map made by BIMCOM. Thank you, Daphne, for it. Of the area in the Negev that is the home of most of the Bedouins, most of the Arabs in the Negev, and specifically the unrecognized villages. And I'm going to say that today we have 7 urban municipalities in the Negev, the biggest one being Rahat, which is a city, a pretty big city, and 6 additional towns. We have 11 recognized villages. We have 4 villages that are in the process of being recognized. We have another 31 villages that have yet to be recognized. So just to give us like the specific overview, I hope you can kind of see in the map, I hope it's clear, but over here, this is Be'er Sheva, pretty much. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. Anyway, I hope you can see Be'er Sheva in the map. This is the main area that we're talking about. That you can see the little bits of color are the unrecognized villages. So you can see it's the whole space is populated with people in either urban or rural settings, either recognized or unrecognized, and that's that's where we work. We want to start by talking about the Regional Council for Unrecognized Villages. And Yela, are you with us? Is Yela here?
I'm here. Yes, I'm
okay.
here, Ela, sorry.
Okay, great. So, יאללה, יש לך משהו כמו 5-10 דקות. Just you have 5 to 10 minutes to give us the main points about the regional council, what it's about, and the way we're going to go is that each organization is going to have 5 to 10 minutes to speak about our work and how it relates to the main processes that are happening regarding recognition in the villages in the Negev. So, go.
Good evening here. I don't think it's good evening where you are. I'm very, very, very happy that you're here in the Zoom, and I'm even more happy that you will be coming to the Negev next week, right? I am Dr. Yela Ra'anan. I live in the Negev. I was born here too. And I am right now the director of the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages. And I am a poor replacement for the Bedouin who actually own this organization and are in the board of directors. Our head of the board of directors, who is an elected person, cannot come here tonight. So I was asked to step in. So I'm sorry. The RCUV was created in 1997 as a reaction to the government's way of dealing with the Bedouin residents of the Negev. And what it does, this RCUV, the Regional Council, it emulates a real council, a real regional council, which I, for example, live in a regular governmental regional council, in which each one of the little communities has a committee. Each committee sends a representative. So the Bedouins emulated such a council and created the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages. At the time in 1997, there were 45 unrecognized villages. This council took upon itself, the person who is the head of the council is elected among those 45, now it's more, 46 villages. The villages that were put into the regional council were only the large villages of 500 residents or more. Our largest village nowadays is 15,000 residents. So the villages can be very big too. Among those 45, 46 heads of villages, representatives of their villages, they elect the head of the RCUV. It is Atiya El Assam, and you will meet him. Around the leadership, this organization was created. Over the 20-some years that this has been working, we have had many successes. For example, all the villages that have been recognized is a result of the work of the RCUV with its partners, BIMCOM, ACRI, and nowadays with Sikui as well. I'm very glad, excellent partners for our work. An example of what we've done together recently is the villages, because of a change of legislation in Israel, the villagers had to pay the highest cost for water in Israel. And so together we managed to advocate with the water authority to change the policies. And thanks to that, 2/3, which is tens of thousands of residents, nowadays get more water at a good rate and higher quality. So that's just something for the last 3 years that we've done together, or 5 years. And the RCUV is the one organization, since it's a grassroots organization, that has ties to everybody in the community. During the COVID, the government turned to us because there was no other way of getting to the people of the villages. So we would help them deliver food to the families. So the RCUV is a very special, very important, the only grassroots organization of the unrecognized villages. Thank you.
I'll just add, Yola, because I'm familiar with your work for at least the past 10-15 years. The fact that the Regional Council for Unrecognized Villages is built in the same along the same lines as a regular recognized regional councils makes it easier for the state or paragovernmental organizations, state authorities to work with the regional council of the unrecognized villages, in the sense of providing services, definitely in the sense of emergency help and support during the lockdowns and COVID, vaccinations, and the testing points during COVID. If I may ask at this point, do you also use the fact that, or in which ways do you use the fact that the regional council speaks the language of a regional council to push forward issues of recognition? For example, in your relationships with state authorities, with planning ministries, and so on.
We certainly are a challenge to the government because we speak in a similar way as the governmental regional councils do. And so it is very difficult not to listen to the leaders of the Regional Council of the Unrecognized Villages, who do not have, beyond this RCUV, voice, an official voice. So we challenge the government. We provide, together with our partners, BIMCOMs, ACRI, and Sikui, papers to the government, plans to the government that force the government to pay attention and government is not just one body, it's many, many bodies. And so we work with as many as we can. We find the cracks, again, never alone, with our partners, and we manage to make difference for the people, for the residents, and being an organization that is the voice of the people and emulates the usual voice of, the governmental style voice of the people, makes the government have to listen to us.
Thank you. So within the partnership we're presenting today between the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages serving as a field organization, BIMCOM serving as a professional planning organization, and Sikui Ufu doing mostly parts of research and advocacy, I want to hand it over now to Ela Gil to present
to Daphne first.
To Daphne from BIMCOM, Daphne Urban Planning with BIMCOM, to present their work, the professional work they do as urban planners around issues of recognition.
Ilan, I forgot, and it's important. Can I just give you another 2 sentences about what these villages are and why they exist? May I? Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. When Israel created its plan for the whole country, it selected the, where the all the communities exist, the cities, the kibbutzim, the moshavim, and it deliberately did not recognize the existence of the Bedouin villages, and therefore we call ourselves unrecognized villages. As such, as not being part of the municipal plans, and with the absence of municipal plans, there's no way in which you can have schools, roads, and building permits. And so initially the entire Negev was like this, and then eventually the government created 7 towns and moved
Yela, you're having some connection.
Mostly.
Yela, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Partially.
Okay, I'll try again. Half the population is not inside those towns, and so therefore it is left in villages that are not put on the Israeli official map, and therefore cannot have the services, or cannot have the structures, the physical structure needed for the services and roads and planning, and therefore also building permits. So these are the unrecognized villages. Nowadays, there are about 300,000 Bedouin in the Negev, and about half of them live in villages which do not have these plans. And some are recognized without plans, and most of them are not recognized. Thank you.
And maybe just to add one sentence before handing it over to Daphna from BIMCOM, and to remove any doubt, those are all citizens of the state of Israel in the Negev. Yes. Daphna, the floor is yours.
So hello, everybody. Thank you for meeting us. My name is Daphna Saporta. I'm an architect. I work in BIMCOM since 2012. The last 6 years, I'm leading the Negev department, where I work with Bedouin communities and promoting recognition and proper planning for the villages. A sentence about BIMCOM. I don't know if you know, but BIMCOM is an Israeli human rights organization formed in 1999 by a group of professional planners and architects in order to advance development of planning policies and practices that are more respectful of human rights and are more relevant to the needs of the local communities in Israel and areas that under Israel control. We're active in all these areas. Specific in the Negev, our goal is to promote recognition to the unrecognized villages. We work in 2 parallel tracks, the top down, which is we work with the decision makers in different authorities, and the bottom up, which we work in the grassroots level. Both tracks is with full cooperation with the communities. I'll come back to this and explain more about our work through the case of one of the villages that was recognized recently, the village of Hashem Zaneh. So as said before, as mentioned by Ela, in about 35 unrecognized villages, there's no planning. And planning really is part of our life. I mean, it really shapes the area in which we live. Planning policies regulate our access to housing, to schools, to preschools, to health clinics, to roads, to parks, to employment and industrial areas, as well as the access to basic infrastructures like sewage, like water, like electricity. So when there's no planning, none of this exists. And this is a situation in the unrecognized villages, also in the recognized villages, but this is another subject. We can get to it maybe later if we'll have time. So to add to this also, the people live with a constantly threat of evacuation and demolition orders. So thanks to the struggle of the Bedouins and the organization which accompany them, that's some of them you're meeting today, there's been a slow recognition of these villages since 2000, 15 so far. The last 4 villages were recently recognized. I don't know if you heard them, you heard on the news, Abde, Hashem Zane, there were 4, Abde, Hashem Zane, Rachame, and Tel Arad. So you have to understand that these process of recognition of a village is a long-term process. It could take a decade and even more. And it is influenced by many factors. It's above all, it's affected by the political situation, but also sometimes there's state interests, like the establishment of national parks, like roads or railroad tracks or army bases, and more. So this, in the case of the village of Hashem Zane, one of the 4 villages that was recently recognized in 2022, it was a mixture of a political situation and a state interest. This village, maybe go back to the map, so I can just locate you where it is, and the people who will be in the field trip next week will meet. We'll see Hashem Zane, will be in this area. I don't know if you see my, do you see my mouse? It is located 10 kilometers east from Beersheba. It's the population of 5,000 people, and it is located in an area which is meant to be crossed by a national big road, Road 6. I don't know if you heard about it. So the state has been pressured for many, many years, have been pressuring the people to move to a neighborhood in a next by recognized village. When I say pressure, I mean constantly threat of demolition and evacuation orders, and also residents who live for decades in a village with poor physical environment. As I said, no services, no basic infrastructures, and actually no horizon that this situation will ever change. But although this pressure on the residents, they refuse to move. Their home is in Hashem Zane. And I want to remind you that this is just an example, but you can take it to all of the unrecognized villages that are in this recognition process. So the resident refused to move because their home is in this village. They live on their historical lands. They established their life there. They built a strong and functional community. So following the struggle to stay, and together with the organization that accompanied them, about 4 years ago, the state realized that in order that they won't move, they won't be able to relocate them. And in order to pave this national road, the solution is planning the village in their current place with this future road next to them. So actually, the need to pave this road, instead of a threat, became an opportunity, a trigger to recognize Hashem Zane in its place. I will try to explain our work through, continue to the example with Hashem Zane and try to explain what we do.
Daphna, if I just may clarify at this point, because I think some of the people assume that any recognition is a recognition in place, but this is usually not the case. And I think that this may needs a bit of a clarification. The fact that today the discussion around recognition is a recognition in situ, in place, as the Rabba Makom, is not at all something we can take for granted. It took a very long time for the state and civil society to get to that point. Yeah.
Yes, I'll talk about it later, but so we work with these residents of Hashem Zane many years, over a decade. We're moving on with them through challenges and opportunities. But 2 years before this decision of the state to recognize them in place, we were working with the local council to formulate an alternative plan together with other organizations, RCUV, of course, which helped us with a community organization of this village. This means first building trust with the people, getting to know the different groups, meeting with women, with students, with older people, and really getting to know more the desires, the dreams, the needs of the community in Hashem Zaneh. We define together with the community, with the local council, the boundaries of the villages, the places for the public services, the school places for school, for sport activities, entrances to the village. And I want to remind you, it was all together, us and the community. So actually, we combined the dreams and the needs of the people with our professional knowledge of planning, our professional knowledge of the planning situation in the specific area of this village. The result is a document which includes planning guidelines, which are actually kind of a stepstones for an outline plan in the future. It has a great importance because it is an agreed offer accepted by the local leadership. It is a way to promote solution, not forcefully above the heads of the people, but together with them. And it's also very important to say, it also provides the residents knowledge and professional tools that helps them to negotiate with the planners and the decision makers from different authorities. And this is very important. Also, I have to mention that during the time we work with the communities, we initiate together meetings, field tours with different members of the authorities, the Southern District Planning Bureau, representatives of the government, the local government, the Bedouin Authority. So today this village is recognized, as we said. There is a planning team which works today on an outline plan. And I have to say, it puts a lot of effort to plan this village with the community. And this is a great change. Also, I mentioned about a month ago, and Ella will speak about it later, there was a school open in this village. So the recognition of a village is a very important move. And of course, we in BIMCOM welcome recognition. But I must say that there are many problematic conditions and barriers in this decision of the recognition of these 4 villages. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us. And I do want to end with an optimistic ending and say that it is a long struggle, our work. There are some successes and many failures, but we do feel that over the year, the discourse is changing. I mean, the public discourse, but also the discourse in the state systems. The fact that 15 villages were recognized since 2000 is the result of our work. First of all, the work of the Bedouins, which struggle for recognition, and also us, the organization, which work with them. There are also a positive change in other issues we can see over the year, which is a result of all this work, and the agendas which kind of seeped into the system over the years. In these days, and this is what Ilan mentioned, in these days, it's more difficult to talk about moving population from one place to another. There is a growing understanding that situ regularization is the solution. There are more and more plans. Today, there's about 50 plans which have to be assured that formalize the status of communities without relocating them. And this is something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was a different situation. And another issue that I want to mention that is constantly changing in a positive direction is the importance of planning together with a society. This didn't exist 15 years ago. The plans came from above and you couldn't implement them. But today there's a clear understanding among the authorities that planning together with the community is critical to the implementation of the plan, to the success.
And Daphne, I want to stop you here
Okay.
and move forward because we don't have much time. I want to leave time for questions. I want to emphasize your last point. I think that we're seeing this not only within the scope of recognition of the Bedouin unrecognized villages. We've been discussing in this group the governmental 5-year plans, 550, 1279, and so on. And I think that we're seeing a gradual process, a slow but gradual process of participation of civil society organizations in the planning discourse, in the decision-making systems. And we've all seen the difference between 922 and 550 and the huge leap forward in the sense of public participation and consultation with experts from civil society.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing that moving forward within the scope of recognition of the unrecognized villages. I want to hand it over to Ela Gil, Program Coordinator for the Negev Equality Project in Sikui Ufuk. Ela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ilan. Can you move, can you go down in the, yeah, 2 more? There you go. Hi, everyone. So I think from looking at the names and the faces, some of you we've met before, and some of you we haven't. So what I'm gonna try and do in very, very short time is tell the story of our work in Sikui Ufuk in the Negev project and where we started and where we are at now, to end with like our future plans of the organizations together. Quick word about Sikui Ufuk. If you haven't met us before, we're an Arab and Jewish organization dealing with advocacy vis-a-vis the government to change policy towards a policy of equality and shared society. And what we use is tools of policy research and advocacy. And we have started working in the Negev, I think 6 or 7 years ago. With the main assumption was that recognition is mostly a political issue, and us with our tools of advocacy and research cannot really influence the main issue of recognition. Instead, what we've developed is a strategy that we call cracks in the system. And what it means is we're going to try and find the places where we can work despite unrecognition, despite the fact that the villagers are unrecognized. We can work to advance the status of the villages by advancing the status of the people. And I will explain what I mean. One of our main courses of action was what we call essential service centers. So we found out that the state has this solution because there are so many unrecognized villages, because there are so many people in unrecognized villages, that the state still has to provide solutions for, specifically in fields like education, where the state has to provide solutions regardless of their children's place of birth or the place that they live in. So for the unrecognized villages, the state has developed a solution called essential service centers, which basically means that they've picked specific spots, and there are permits to put caravans there. And in the caravans, you can build kindergartens, you can build schools, you can put a clinic, you can put a welfare center. There's a list of uses that you can use. And when we started working, there were, I think, maybe 8. There were 8 villages that had these centers. And we've realized that this center is a very good way to bring resources into a village, because if you build a service center in a village, you can pave a road into a village. If you pave the road into a village, you can bring the bus inside an unrecognized village. And that's the picture that you're looking at. It's a bus in the village of Al Zarnoug, which we will visit in our tour.
Ela, I also want to add a sentence here, because I think the framing here is very important. I think that we're hearing about the process of recognition here from 3 organizations pushing forward the issue of recognition from 3 different angles. And I think that the discourse that you're leading as a field, as civil society, is dominated by a perception that slowly managed to actually make it to the state that providing services to people is not dependent on their rights on the land. And
Exactly.
the whole issue of the service centers that are slowly being established in the unrecognized villages is exactly that. People are eligible for public transportation, as you're showing here, and that has nothing to do with the fact of their home ownership or land ownership.
While at the same time, we're always saying that we're never saying that this is the perfect solution. The ideal solution is recognition. While we can't necessarily in our tools, or we thought we could promote recognition, we can still promote services, we can still promote infrastructure, and that's what we've been doing. So you can see an example of a bus line that is going into an unrecognized village. Daphne mentioned earlier the school in Hashem Zane that was opened just a month ago as a result of our work with the RCUV. We also, 2 years ago, we were able to get to the planning committee, the district planning committee. And we started collaborating with them, and they've asked us to put together a plan for service centers in all the unrecognized villages. And in a very short timeline, alongside with the RCUV and with BIMCOM, facilitating our different strengths, BIMCOM's expertise in planning and the RCUV's connection to the people, we were able to put together a plan and to suggest over 20 new spots that we think should have service centers. And this is a plan that is now being promoted by the state, by the planning committee and by the Ministry of Welfare. We don't know what will happen. It might work, it might be approved and it might not, but being at that situation where the state is promoting, sorry, I thought I'm running out of battery. Being at this situation where the state is promoting a program that is so ambitious, that was built by us, the NGOs, is a huge success for us. And it is showing that the state is really adopting our, like was said before, our way of thinking about the unrecognized villages, whereas you can't keep waiting for the conflict around the land to be solved in order to start providing services and infrastructure and planning. So this has been some of our work for the last 5 or 6 years, and I want to move forward. Can you scroll down, Ilan? One more. So last year and a half, we've realized that our three organizations, we work very well together. We have completing strengths, and we can cooperate and collaborate well together. And we've started thinking about a bigger, more ambitious plan, or a more ambitious project. Actually, just I want to give a short orientation. So one slide up is the map that we've started with. Okay, so if you can see the part that's been circled around, this area is called Bikat Be'er Sheva, the Be'er Sheva Valley. And it is basically the heart of the area of the Bedouin community in the Negev. It's located between two main roads, 25 and 31. And the entire space, the entire surface is basically populated. There are 6 unrecognized villages there. And what we've decided to start doing is to build a regional program, a bigger program that is going to deal with a lot of different aspects. BIMCOM will keep on doing, keeping on doing what they know to do, which is planning with the people, alongside the RCUV, of course. But at the same time, we want to look at areas such as development. Why are the villages that are being recognized why can't the state has been unable to develop the villages into what seems to look like a proper recognized settlement? We want to look into the entire aspect of municipal organization, should these villages be a part of an existing local authority? Should it be their own authority or something else? So these are the questions that we're dealing with today. And I think the main, we've upscaled our work in a way with this project. And the main issue is that we're not thinking about just like a specific village. We're thinking about the entire area, and we're looking to provide like a comprehensive solution to a huge area of over 30,000 residents. And we're confident that just like we were able to do before, we will be able to work with the government to convince different bodies inside the government to, in the end, adopt our point of view and the solution, the alternative solution that we're offering. So this is just like the tip of the tip of the iceberg of what we're doing today. But I think this is the next step. This is what we're heading towards.
And
Yeah,
I think that in the same sense, the same way that the discourse that this arena, this collaboration of civil society organizations in the Negev, this discourse slowly makes its way into the state authorities and governmental halls, and slowly makes it into the parliamentary committees, and the state is slowly adapting, even if not in action mostly, but even on the discursive level. Terms such as ordination, hasdara b'makom, rather than eviction of the Bedouin communities, the unrecognized villages in the Negev. I think that the fact that this collaboration between the civil society organizations pushing for recognition is also speaking the language of the state in the sense of establishing another regional council in the Negev. One of the points that the state was always raising was, how can we provide services to those remote villages, those inaccessible villages? They're too scattered. It's too hard to provide services to those villages. And after the establishment of El Kasum and of Emidbar, what used to be Abu Basma in the Negev, I think that the fact that the discourse that those three organizations are promoting, calling for the establishment of a third regional council for the providing of services to those villages, is also tapping into the kind of discourse that the state knows how to work with, rather than simply calling for recognition of those communities.
I think it's a bit early to talk about a third local authority or municipal authority, but the main idea that I very much, that resonates with me and what you're saying, that I connect to, is that we're doing our best to give very practical solutions that the state can use. We're doing our best to speak their language in a way that is effective in changing the discourse. And hopefully we were able to demonstrate that through our work.
Thank you very much, Ella, Daphna, and Yaela. I want to open the floor for questions. Use the little time we have for questions. Go ahead. Yeah, Brenda.
I think we're all familiar with the government's 5-year plan for the Bedouin. And I wonder if you could just connect the dots between that plan and what you work on. I know that most of the plan is about the 7 towns and the recognized localities, but what are the points of intersection?
Ella, you want to answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I think in Sikui in general, we've been very involved with the 5-year plans for the Arab Society, 55922 and then 550, and the same in the Negev. And the place I'm gonna interact with your question, Brenda, is comparing the previous 5-year plan for the Negev 2397 to this one. We've been much more involved in the Negev with the 5-year plan. And accordingly or not, there has been you've said correctly that most of the funds and most of the program is about the recognized villages or towns, but for the first time in this program, some of the funds and some of the programs are relevant to the unrecognized villages. So they have built a framework where they speak sometime part of the time about the Bedouin settlements and some part of the time about the Bedouin society to enable the funds to go into the unrecognized villages. There are very few items that are specifically directed towards the unrecognized villages, such as road pavement or road fixing. And this is a very big shift in the way that the government is thinking about the Bedouin society and within the framework of the 5 years plan, because the previous 5 years plan, the thought was, okay, we're going to invest in the recognized settlements and the recognized towns. They're going to be a better socioeconomic development there. And it's going to be like part of the interest of the villages to move, to relocate into the recognized settlements from the unrecognized villages. And I think we're seeing some sprouts of understanding that this is not something that is going to happen. And my personal point of view, which I think a lot of, or some government officials are starting to understand, is that as long as there are unrecognized villages, the entire Bedouin society is affected and badly affected, because there are 1/3 of the population that is the state is struggling to provide services to, and the local authorities are struggling because these are people that live just outside their, their town. And I think they're starting to understand that they have to give some thought to these people, despite, and this connects to what Ilan said before, despite the conflict around the land, despite the conflict around recognition, there are some very basic needs that has to be answered. And the 5 year plan is like a small step forward in this direction. And I hope that answers the question.
Can I add one sentence? Hi, everybody. My name is Ragad Jaraisi, and I'm the co-director of the Equality Policy Department at Sikoy Ufuk. I think that we see the 5 year plan for the Negev as an opportunity to promote our projects and our our goals in the Negev. For example, regarding the establishment of essential services centers in the Negev, the 5 year plans oblige the government to give access to basic services for the unrecognized villages. And we are trying to convince the government that without service centers in the unrecognized villages, this could not be fulfilled, and the budget will not be allocated, and
divided, yeah.
Divided, and 5 years will pass by, and we will still see budget not fully divided and used. So we are trying to use every path that is open now because of the implementation of the 5 year plan and committees that were established with together with the 5 year plan. And we are trying to use this new opportunity in order to fulfill our aims and goals in the Negev.
Ragad, I think you're raising a very important point here, because I think that for the first time, and especially after 2397, the previous 5 year plan for the Negev, there is some sort of a shared stress between the Ministry of Welfare, who's in charge of allocating those budgets, and civil society to get this money out. in tenders, in implementation processes for civil society organizations and local authorities. The state is interested in getting this money out in the implementation just as much as the local authorities and civil society. And this is an opportunity. That's a very important point.
Exactly, and this is as a result of the NGOs' work along the last 5 years and the last year. And I think there are much more, they accompany the implementation of the plans, and the government feels that it needs to show success. And I think that this is a very important point that we should be pressuring on and using as much as we can.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, if I may. We've also found some new partners because of the change in the political structure that we had during the last year. And that also has made a difference. Can you guys hear me? No.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So yeah, the political partners that we have, which are stronger, or at least we're stronger, I don't know what's going to happen after these elections, have also made a huge difference in the ability to put into the plan the need for everything that we spoke of, the roads to the service centers. And if in the last plan, the residents of the unrecognized villages were on purpose left out, this time they were put in. And again, on purpose, not enough, but it's a good start. And we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Alan. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question. I think you and Daphne had an exchange when she was speaking about recognition in place versus something else, recognition not in place. Did I miss something or misunderstand it? I just wanted, wondering if Daphne or you could explain.
Recognition of a village it has to be in place. I mean, in 15, 20 years ago, the policy was relocating all the communities living in these small villages into these 7 townships, Rahat, Khura, and you probably know about them, and the 11, today it's 15 villages which are recognized. Today, more and more they speak of in situ regularization. It's a different. There is a difference between for plans which for how do you say planning communities in place without relocating, and recognition. Recognition is something more in a political level, and it goes actually in a parallel track sometimes with the planning of the village. But the planning of the village can't go without recognition. But when we speak about recognition of the villages, it's recognition in the current place. There could be some, movements, but it's always based on the agreements with the people. And this is the agenda that we are leading. And I think the authorities more and more understand this solution. There's a long way to go. It's not perfect, of course. We have a long way to go, and as I said, it's a long struggle. But it is changing. It is changing in a positive way.
I think, Alan, just to even further clarify this, 15, 20 years back, it was very clear that the state is only allowing the Bedouins in the unrecognized villages to be land and homeowners, not in their current place of residing, either in one of the towns or in expansions in neighborhoods that were expanding the existing towns. Today, this is not the dominant discourse. Today, the discourse has shifted towards ordination, regularization of the villages in the same places where they are located, mostly.
I want to add another important point, that is today we see more and more boundaries of the recognized villages and township, which are expanded in order to include communities which used to live outside the boundaries of the village, For instance, Rahat the boundary grew to include 2 small communities which were living there. So instead of the policy of moving this community inside Rahat, they expand the boundaries so that these 2 communities won't move. The same we see in other places, and this is more and more we see it. Because, you know, I think the authority understand that this is the only solution. The people won't move from their historical lands and from the communities they established. And it will take a lot. I mean, yeah, that's a.
Bonnie, go ahead. Yeah.
This is all very exciting. I'm really so pleased to hear your progress. It occurs to me that the Bedouin in the townships who were moved might have an attachment to their historical lands. And if they see that these villages are becoming recognized or at least partially serviced, what do you think are the chances of some of the settled Bedouin wanting to reclaim their traditional village sites and live there?
Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, I think you can answer.
Most of the Bedouin that are in the townships were people that were put into the area that we call the Siag. The government calls the Siag, from their traditional lands in the early 1950s. On most of these lands, almost entirety, there are now Jewish communities or agriculture of these communities. I have never, ever heard of someone that is saying, let's do what is needed to get our lands back. So there is an understanding that they are rebuilding their lives over the last 70 years in their new locations. So it is maybe an interesting theoretical question, but there is never, ever any discussion of that among the urban Bedouin today.
Thank you.
If I may, one thing that I missed when I was trying to explain is you will meet communities that are extremely poor. 70 years of the policies of non-recognition have caused extreme difficulties in promoting their economic and educational possibilities. Also, the homes are always very poor and poorly built, because they are always, because of the lack of urban planning, there is no ability to build a house with a permit. And so therefore, all of them are under the threat of demolition. And so the houses are built from the minimal, least expensive materials possible. I can't see you. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And so you will meet poverty, and you will meet third world country kind of conditions. And as an advocate for the rights of the people in the unrecognized villages, for me, that is one of the most heart-wrenching parts of the story, that the policies have brought about also extreme poverty. The communities are strong, but the poverty is also very immense.
So just to clarify, on November 3rd, we're going out on a field day, on a field visit in the Bedouin unrecognized villages in the south. If you haven't noticed that in the registration and you are in Israel around the SVF board visit or in any other way, you're more than welcome to join us. Email us and we'll register you in. Batya, go ahead. I saw you raise your hand, and then David.
I was wondering, I know that BIMCOM worked for years to gain recognition of a number of villages and brought everything to the point at which it was just the political recognition that was necessary, and that was achieved. I'm wondering now about, I have two questions. One is, are there additional villages that are in a similar situation beyond these 4? And can you speak about those? And two, how much now that people talk about recognition, but the fact is that there are villages that are recognized which look just like an unrecognized village in terms of the reality of the lives for those residents. And so I'm wondering about both of those questions.
I think that connects to what I was talking about. Thank you for asking that, because maybe it wasn't clear enough, but that connects to what I was talking about in the last slide of the presentation. Is Daphne can answer the first half of the question, maybe about the other villages, but definitely the 6 villages of the Beersheba Valley, the El Naga area, the Bikat Beersheba area, are all villages that are in some level of a process of recognition or planning. And then the other part is that we're in the very early stages of a big research regarding the barriers to development of the recognized villages, because like you said, some of them have been recognized for 20 years and they look exactly the same. And we can tell from the beginning that there are a lot of different aspects here. So part of it for sure is how you plan it. So part of the problems in development can be prevented if you implement certain principles in the planning process. And what we're hoping to do is to figure out exactly what are these things so we can start planning accordingly to enable development in the future. And other barriers are municipal or bureaucratic or, financial or others, and we're going to work with them as well. But that's a very general answer to a very good question.
David, go ahead. You also raised your hand.
But there's Batia asked another question.
Oh,
think.
sorry. I don't want to, yes, we don't have much time. I don't want to keep you.
So I'll just say that except these 4 villages, which were recently recognized, we do know for sure that there is a strong acknowledgement among the different authorities that this Beersheba, the Beersheba Valley, which you saw in the presentation, it is an area they are promoting planning there, recognition. It's a very complex area because it's very scattered, you say, Mefuzal. But we do know that people, representative of the Bedouin Authority, are working there with a few planning teams and meeting the people in order to start, checking the planning condition. This is how Hashem Zane started with a planning team that just checked if it is possible to plan. So the same process is starting in this Beersheba Valley. I hope I respond to your question. Yeah.
Okay, my question may sound loaded. It is not intended to be confrontational in the least, but the term historical lands has been used a couple of times. And my question simply is, how far in history are we talking about? And is that relevant at all in the issue of recognition of unrecognized villages? Does recognition go back of settlement go back to 70 years or before 70 years or since 70 years in particular?
Would you like me to answer that one, my friends? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we say historical lands, mostly what we're talking about is the feelings of belonging that are of the people of these villages. We have evidence that some villages like Hashem Zane, people have lived there for hundreds of years. There's no written history, so it's oral history, so we don't know how many hundreds, but evidences are like cemeteries and water holes and so on. But when it is not important, is when we're talking about the recognition and the planning of the villages. We are not insisting, the people of the villages are not insisting that the government accept their historical land ownership. What they are insisting is the historical connection to the land, which is very different. It's not like a legal paper, okay, give me my land rights, but it is accept the fact that I have been here, and for me, this is the location of my village. So it is there, it is very important, but it is not important at all at the same time. Did I answer okay? Was it what you wanted to?
Not entirely, because
Okay.
my question is, how recent can an unrecognized, a group of Bedouin, a chamula, a large family, a group of families, say, this is where we have been? In other words, if we have been there for the last 20 years or 30 years, is the claim still valid? Not for ownership, but in terms of recognition of as a village.
The villages, the recent villages are about 190 years. The ones which are older are hundreds. And again, we don't have a number. We know 190 because they have a deed of buying the land from the other Bedouins that were there beforehand. So during the Ottoman period, they bought the land and they have a deed. But these are the newcomers. This is, 150 to 190 years ago are the newcomers. And so the others were there hundreds of years before that. But, there's no written record. So I don't know if they don't know if it's 400 or 600 or 1,000, but we're talking back in time that they can't remember when it started.
But I do want to add that for some reason, the question of ownership on the land is only relevant when we're talking about Arab citizens in Israel. The state of Israel doesn't have any problem with building a lot of Jewish settlements in the Negev with no connection to the ownership in the land on public lands for that matter. So our approach today is that ownership should not be the starting point for the debate. We can start with planning, because with planning you promote agreements, and once you've reached agreements you can talk about the ownership conflict, which is the main point of discourse throughout the last 30 years at least, and it has brought us nowhere, honestly.
Thank you, Ella. We're 10 minutes past our time. Maybe one last question before we say goodnight, and hopefully see all of you on November 3rd in the field.
And Atia, the head of the RCUV, which again, I apologize, could not be here today, and other members of the community itself.
So I want to say thank you very much to Yael Ra'anan from the Regional Council for the Unrecognized Villages, Daphne Sapota from BIMCOM, and Ella Gil from Sikoy Ufuk for this beautiful presentation of the collaboration between different civil society organizations on the promotion of the discourse of recognition of the Bedouin unrecognized villages. You're welcome to join us on November 3rd. We've also recorded this meeting, and if someone wasn't able to join us this evening, we'll be happy to send the recording. Toda rabba ve'layla tov. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing you in Israel.
Everybody, see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you next week.
Next year.
Bye-bye.